really thrilled to have you on the show today, Todd. Todd and I work together very closely in one of the best professional partnerships I've had of my career. He and I were in charge of what became the Insights product at New Relic, and worked on a new product line that ultimately the company wasn't able to deliver on. And that we learned a great deal from that about how to shape companies to be able to deliver, and how to drive a lot of alignment across organizations and things like that. Todd has since been at many places. He was VP of product at Jan Rain, at Bright MD. Has been doing a lot of advisory work to product companies. You were chief product officer at Conversica, and you're now embarking on fractional consulting product leadership at Apex Solutions. So really nice to have you on the show. I'm just super excited to have this conversation with you and share it with everybody.
Yeah, it's interesting, Jake. You brought up. Yeah. So by the way, thank you, and I totally agree. It's been one of the I think more fruitful and partnerships we've had, and just pleasant.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. So much fun.
And I think about it, and like you brought up the product we tried to build. That we ended up, but I was thinking about that very thing this morning. It maybe gets to what I kind of want to talk about.
Great.
We didn't fail in building that.
No.
Now, did we hit the milestones we wanted to hit along the way? No, it was more difficult than we thought.
It was almost an impossible product to build.
To this day, 10 years later, I still believe.
Yeah, I do too.
Actually, I think there's even a place for that product today if you could figure out how to make it. Okay.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about, I mentioned to you that I'd love to talk about mindset, because it's something all these years later, I still struggle to qualify what I'm talking about. But this is a good example. We were about a year into building it.
Mm-hmm.
We were starting to get some traction on some things, finding difficulties in others. And I won't go into all the details, but the company kind of made a pivot in the go-to-market approach, which took the target customer away. We were heading more toward the business, right? The product manager, the marketer, product marketer type. But in the kind of a go-to-market strategy shifted more towards the DevOps guy.
Yeah.
And we weren't positioned, honestly, at the time for that, right? And so Patrick, who at the time was my boss, had been my peer, both my boss, became my peer again, now just my friend, whatever, right?
Yeah.
He came to me and said, I'll never forget sitting in the office and him saying, we need to cancel this project. And I argued with him, about it, but it was not, when I say argued, I mean, we had a spirited discussion about what was respectful, about why. And at the end, he was like, Todd, we don't have at the end of the day, it was like, look, if we don't get something better over here, we're going to fail.
Yeah.
And we can't do both. And what you and Jade are doing is not pushing in that direction.
Yeah.
And so the decision, and this is the key point, for the good of the company, was I had to cancel my product. Now, let's think about that. That left me as a VP of product with no product.
Yeah.
But Patrick, number one, I trusted Patrick implicitly. Patrick said to me, he's like, look, we're going to figure out something for you. Now, after that came actually maybe you and I had already launched Insights, which arguably led to the company's IPO.
Yeah.
This reset, and it was a reset, I ended up, and you were managing the team that did it, managing that whole pricing administrative package, which also was another turning point for the company. So I say that because like I had to trust in the transparency between me and Patrick, and in the, hey, if you do the right thing for the company in the long term, the right things will come out of it. And so that's what I'm talking about when I talk about mindset. And I was thinking about how it, I try to weave this into how I talk about it. I'm trying to help companies build and operationalize their product strategy, right? By installing a product operating system, tailored, right? Modular, links to strategy and execution cadence and measurement. But I think a lot of times what people think of, if we just had this process, if we just used that template, we should buy that tool.
Yeah.
All that is great and you need it.
Yeah.
But it's kind of useless without the right mindset. And you can't come in and say, okay, we're going to set up this tool and this process and this template. And by the way, here's how you're going to think it. That doesn't work.
No.
And what I've really learned over all those years, starting there at Relic, is you can't force that mindset. It's truly a place of, I'm going to show it to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then people will follow that. People will take it on when they believe it, when they trust it, right? Patrick had showed me that.
Yeah.
He told me that, I believed it, right? When you talk about, hey, we're going to trade X off for Y, and you tell the sales team, we traded X off for Y because of X. That's that mindset thing that starts going. Does that make sense?
It totally does. I mean, you and I both, we basically had to look at something we had poured, a year of our life into. And I thought it was kind of actually remarkable that both of us, when we looked at it, we were like, yeah, I can both believe that this is actually a great product that should be built. And I also, at the same time, can believe that it's off strategy based on our new clarified approach. And I actually thought that was a hallmark of good strategy. It was like I could totally, in a way, disagree with it, but still see it as the way I was going to support. And I think that I love your point that it requires a mindset in the leadership team, because I've seen a lot of companies that don't have that. And I also think you're particularly good at alignment. That's something I've always just really respected you for. So can you tell me a little bit about that, building that mindset on teams, or what you've seen in other companies that both have or don't have certain parts of this mindset?
Okay, so I've obviously spent a lot of time leading product teams, design teams, engineering teams by proxy, whatever.
Yeah.
One of the first things I do with product managers is I tell them, how people always tell product managers, be the CEO of your product.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you're never going to hear me say, be the CEO of your product. Now, I totally agree with the sentiment behind it, which I think the problem is the sentiment behind it has gotten lost.
Yeah.
The sentiment behind it is, hey, take ownership, right? Own it. Own your decisions. Be responsible. What people start taking it for is, I need to make this successful no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as soon as you get beyond one product manager on your team,
yeah,
if you have people acting like that, you've got a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what I try to tell them is look, be responsible, take accountability, but also remember there's one CEO, right?
Yeah.
And we have to support their strategy and their approach as long as it's not illegal or immoral.
Yeah.
And that means sometimes the right decision for the company is the wrong decision for your product, and maybe by extension you.
Yeah.
Right. But my point is, if it's the right decision for the company, it's not the wrong decision for you. And that's what's you've got. So that's one way, right? And what I try to tell everybody is, look, we are a team. that are, yes, have different parts of responsibility for different things. We have to look at the bigger picture and take that into account as we make decisions, right? So that's part of it. That's kind of maybe the setup for alignment.
That's interesting.
And then maybe the other thing about it is I guess I try to be direct. I don't know how else to say this.
Todd,
I
you're
try to be
direct.
direct without being an asshole, right?
Yeah.
And maybe sometimes I fall over into the latter. But the point I'm trying to make is, I think when you have those open conversations cross functionally, here's what we're doing. What do you? It's. I'll tell you where I learned this. One of the most important things I ever learned. I learned in a hotel in February in St. Petersburg, Russia.
Wow.
Okay? So this was years ago. I was in product marketing actually, and so this guy Al Nor and I, he was in sales, and we had been Nortel Wireless Networks Russia for like 6 months before we started from Richardson, Texas, before we started building up a team over there. We're over there trying to get a deal, and we're in this. We're one of two remaining. This local guy, and he has an American consultant that's helping him, and the American consultant was a former employee of our competitor. And so every time we would say something, they would try to add a liquidated damage to it or something, right? Just everything I said, they were just trying to like put me on the line. And so the VP of sales, North boss, is there. We went out and he said, we need to take a break and talk about this. We sat down, we got a beer. He got us all beers. And then so this VP of sales, here's what he did. He went around the table. There were 6 or 7 of us there, different disciplines. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? He didn't say what he thought. He started with the people on the ground. What do you think?
That's brilliant.
Now, what Al Nor did, this is the second lesson I learned that day, was Al Nor is we have to change the game, man. And so we went back in. This was on a day of projectors, overhead projectors. We got blank transparency sheets and wrote our slides in hand with markers. And went back in, and we actually called it. What was it? We called it on the slide. Nortel's changed the game proposal. And what we did is we were like, okay, we're going to make the best offer we make that we can feel good about. But we're going to, I don't know how to say it. If we win it, we'd feel good about it. But if we lose it, we think it's going to screw our competitor. He's just going to force them into where they don't want to be.
Nice.
And so we didn't win the deal, by the way. But when we left the room, that consultant was practically in the corner in the fetal position, not knowing what to do. And so, that to me was like such a lesson in thinking on your feet, in listening, and empowering the people who actually know what they're doing. I shouldn't say actually know what they're doing. Actually know the status on the ground, right? And even though we lost, so I think that to me that's the I've learned. You've seen me in demo days, right? Like asking people why, or being open to asking those questions and not having to have the answers. Basically engaging with people, I think does a lot to get that alignment, right? When you ask them a question, when you ask people smart questions and let them talk about their area of expertise, and I don't say this is not just manipulation. It's just true. People, they see you engaging and they'll listen to you more when you do have to, as a leader, step up and say, no, this is what we're going to do, or whatever. It's going to be a lot more when you engage people, as opposed to it's the whole like top down, bottom up. Does that make sense? Does that kind of get at what you were?
It does. I would say also what I've seen observationally, what I've observed you do is you notice people at the edge of misalignment, or there's like something uncomfortable that comes up. And I think a lot of leaders kind of shy away from that. And for you, like this is what I learned from you actually, is that you really like that flags something for you. And then you will have a conversation about whatever that thing is. And I mean, that seems very basic actually, or like, but so many leaders, including myself, historically, would shy away from the uncomfortable or from the conflict or something. And it's not that you want to just like pounce on anything. It's that you approach it with this curiosity to kind of bring out the conflict and resolve it. I just think you're very good at that.
I appreciate that, and it's something. I take that back to my days at Nortel many years ago. We brought on this new president, and I'll never forget. This stuck with me. This was, oh my goodness, this was last century.
Wow, yeah.
But this really stuck with me. His first all hands in Richardson, where we were, he used the phrase "no pocket vetoes," and you'll hear me talk about that to this day. It really stuck with me because you see that, right? You see. And it can be passive aggressive. Sometimes it's just whatever, right? But I think what allows that to happen, to your point, Jade, I think especially in our industry, there's a lot of introverts, a lot of people and extroverts. I mean, it doesn't matter, but there's a lot of, I think kind of by nature, there's a lot of people who are not comfortable with conflict. They would rather resolve something behind closed doors. And I get it. But what happens is, if we have those meetings and Susie and I notice it and I don't address it, and then I go later on in our one-on-one, I go, "Hey, Susie, I noticed I kind of felt like you didn't agree." So we have that conversation. But now everybody else has to know in the context, right? And then I go talk to you. "Hey, Susie," and then you go talk to an engineer. Well, now we're playing telephone.
Yeah. Nobody gets on the same page.
Right. And so I just found like, maybe it's just my natural state of being. Maybe it's just what I've observed, but I find that just by saying, "Hey, okay, hey," sometimes that look on your face tells me something.
Yeah.
Right. Or just being quiet when they normally wouldn't be quiet, whatever. And I've just found that if you just, to your point, you gently ask, "Hey, I'm not sure you agree," or even if you want to even be softer, "What do you think?" Right.
Yeah.
Back to my example from St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
And I do think you're right, but I think you have to be observant of the people, and I think it's a lot easier when you're in person.
Yeah.
But it's possible. It's possible on Zoom. Or Google Meets or whatever, right? Like it's possible but it's harder because you have to kind of observe 6 boxes as opposed to, you can see right around the table, right? But I think it's just that thing, and maybe even more now in this so much remote setting, is you have to actively speak it out as opposed to, "I noticed this." It's like, you maybe do need to go around the room more. "What do you think? What do you think? What do you think?" And you have to give room for those discussions to happen and be prepared when somebody does, if it does get heated.
Yeah.
Just say, "Oh, okay, hold on. Good point. Let's talk." And it's just, yeah. Anyway.
I think though what happens is if you build up this sort of trust and understanding over time, you build a team that can really have these conversations more and more fluidly. And I think it was Jeff Martins actually that really taught me the value, and Jeff was on your team. He really taught me the value of trust in like communication, and just how it streamlines all of your communication and all of your decision making. It's like this fast mode. The more you trust each other, the the better your decision making and the quicker it happens.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good point, and I think it's uncomfortable. It can be.
Yeah.
I think you have to go into everything assuming the best of people, assuming that they are there for the right reasons, that they are there to support you, that they are there to help the company win, whatever, right? You have to assume positive intent.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do that, you exhibit trust, and then trust will be returned. Has this bitten me in the back more than once? And I mean, up to and including dire consequences.
Yeah.
Where I trusted the wrong people.
Yeah.
But I also know that every night I can go brush my teeth before I get in bed and look, okay, like I'm proud of how I have acted, right? And so I do think that's a great point. You gain trust by giving trust, I think is maybe the way to put it.
One question I have for you is, I've observed that there's like one of the bigger challenges in the head of product or CPO or VP of product role is alignment with the CEO. And there's often just a ton of tension between what the founders or the CEO wants. And often the head of product, their job is actually to develop this almost independent view of where the product should go, or they view it as their job. And so I guess I'd love to hear a little bit about how you've navigated that and how that plays into like alignment as a company. Like how should product leaders navigate that sort of thing?
I think it's a good point. And again, guess what? What does it go back to? Be the CEO of your product. There's one CEO.
Yes.
Right? Okay. So here's my view. I guess, okay, let's see if I can say this succinctly. The real role of the product team is to be the keepers of the and managers of the product strategy and the execution of that product strategy. Now, what does that mean? That doesn't mean they're going to go up in a room and twiddle some knobs and come out with, here's the product strategy. They have to gather all the intake. They have to manage the process by which it is created.
Yeah.
And should they have an outsized voice on the creation? Yes. I mean, otherwise, why would you have hired them?
Yeah.
Right. But it's certainly that their job is really to drive the alignment around the product strategy. And that doesn't mean, well, I think it should be this, so therefore it's this.
Yeah.
Now, what I always like people to do, whether it's for a feature, a tech debt trade-off, or a whole new product, is I want to see them come in. Here's problem, right? It's classic. But what I expect them to do is say, here are the options, and here's my recommendation. That's what I get at. Like, we're the keepers and the drivers. Yes, this is our recommendation for these reasons.
Yeah.
Right. And I think when you start, especially in smaller companies, which let's just talk about it. Let's talk about when I came into New Relic and I was, head of product or director of product at first for Insights, Project Rubicon. Lou, our CEO, 50% of his time was spent coding on this, right? Lou used to joke that I had the hardest job in New Relic because I had to manage him, and it was true.
Yeah.
Right. But I also learned it wasn't about managing him.
Mm-hmm.
He had a vision. It wasn't my job to create a parallel vision.
Yeah.
But I had to learn how did I affect that, right? And so I definitely had ideas about what we should do that were different from his. What did I do? I gathered data. I talked to customers. When I was able to come back and say, here's all the qualitative stuff that I learned from this customer, that customer, this customer, and here's all the quantitative stuff. And therefore, boom, he was like, okay.
Yeah.
Or there were times like, I dare you, but this is what we're going to do.
Yep.
And why? And he was good about saying why.
Yeah. And honestly, that's the CEO's job. I mean,
that is the CEO's job.
yeah,
I mean, that's why the company went IPO, and because of his vision, right? And I think that's
yeah,
what you have to recognize. Now, he was a founder. That's different than later on when you have a non-founder CEO. But I mean, let's remember that they were brought in for a purpose. Sometimes, and often, it's like they want their vision on how to grow the product. If it's not that, they're going to hire you as a product team and say, "I need you to do this." Right.
yeah,
And so I think it's also a matter of assessing the situation, right? Is this I'm here to execute the founder's vision? I'm here to create a vision because the CEO is more operational and he's hired me to do this. Is it a partnership?
yeah,
Right. And so I just think anyway, I think that's how you do it. Is you'd have to assess the situation to understand your role. And it's not always, I'm here to be the visionary.
yeah. No, that totally makes sense.
In fact, I think it's usually not to be the visionary.
Yeah.
Even though the job description says we're seeking a visionary head of product, whatever, right?
Yeah. So can you tell me a little about, you're doing like assessments of organizations, and I'm kind of curious, like how you evaluate an organization as you look at it. What are you looking for, both in terms of like process, but also culture and trust, and like how the executive team functions and that sort of thing?
Yeah. So the way I'm trying to approach it is from a very diagnostic, and I don't just mean diagnostic, qualitative, right? And so I think there's several ways to do that. One is interviews, talking to people, asking a set of questions or a specific set of questions around things I want to know about, which I'll come to. There's actual surveys, right? Getting people to, right? So you can have some quantitative element.
Mm-hmm.
And then looking at artifacts, right? Roadmaps, strategies, go-to-market documents, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And what I'm looking for in these things, I'm looking for kind of, I'm surveying, I guess you could say, for things around strategy, documentation and communication, that prioritization and trade-offs, operating rhythms, right? And kind of that overall mindset. And so, I think, like, for instance, strategy, I've kind of started breaking it down into, okay, there's like 6 kind of views of where your strategy is. One of them is great.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think, well, if that's great, you're probably not hiring me as your fractional TPO. But it sounds like, oh, it's too, actually now all of a sudden I can't remember the terms, but it's like, hey, it's more durable and driven by the CEO, or, it's fragmented and not well understood, or it's well understood by these, but not by everybody. Right. And then, so I'm trying to assess, because I think depending on which of those buckets you get put in, the way to, at the end of the day, you and I both know the way to have it really humming is to have it written down and shared with everybody.
Yeah.
But I think there's different paths to get there.
Yeah.
Right. So first, like, that's how I'm trying to do it. Where are you on this? And how do we, okay, if it's living in your founder's head, okay, we got to work on that, right? If you've got a great roadmap, but you don't really have a problem to find, there's a different approach to get to that, right? Okay, so that's one thing. Yeah. And then the other is really about, like, understanding how cross-functional people feel about how things are. Do they understand?
Yeah.
Right? Do they understand what's going on? And it's even interesting little diagnostics. And I talked about this in one of my LinkedIn posts recently. Like, hey, about trade-offs, go to your sales team and ask them, what is the product team focusing on right now to deliver? Right, and just see what they say. Does it line up with what your product person just told you? Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's a stupid little diagnostic, but
no, it's a good test.
Another one is, like, I was talking with the potential customer recently, and there were 3 of them, the 2 founders and an investor. And I said, hey, okay, I tell you what, we're going to take 2 minutes. I want you each to write down what you believe is a product strategy. Very high level.
Yeah.
Don't talk, write it down. And then we're going to read it back. And one of them read it back and he's like, oh, it's to grow to $50 million and get a round of funding. And like, that's a goal.
Yep. Not a strategy. Yep.
Right. But I mean, it's just kind of like trying to observe, and really it's, to me, I've kind of divided up into these 5 different areas.
Yeah.
And trying to assess each one individually, because they each feed into each other. And I'm not a playbook person.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, a playbook means, we're going to do, you're going to run there, you're going to run there, you're going to block this person, then you're going to pass it there. As opposed to what's the real situation on the ground in your company, right? And so I think you have to assess it with that idea of like, how is it working or not working for them?
Yep.
Doesn't mean you can't use templates and playbooks or whatever, but
no, but the situation is always different. And so having one playbook is usually pretty limiting. Building a strategy, especially writing down a strategy, is often like incredibly expensive. Like it takes so much time often. Yet you and I have seen the benefit of like a really well done strategy. I think a lot of people have not. So for a lot of people, they hear about a strategy and they're like, maybe they've read some books about it, or maybe they haven't. A lot of people often don't even know what a strategy is. But can you talk a little bit about like why it's so valuable to have a good strategy for people that maybe haven't seen it before?
Yeah. So, okay. This is, the name of my company is Apex Solutions. It's driven by motorsport, and everything in racing is about hitting the apex, right? And there's a key concept is this. For some turns, it's called slow down to speed up. And the whole thing is like, look, I'm gonna compromise my speed going into this turn to make that long curving section of the track to shorten it into a straight, so I can go faster. And to me, that is the key. That is the whole product strategy thing. Slow down to speed up. Take a bit of time to write it down. I think people sometimes are lost in the PRDs of the 90s that were 100 pages long. And, there is a huge value, like we were talking about how I drive things, right? One of the outputs of part of what I do with on the strategy side is a strategy blueprint. It's a one page thing with boxes, right? Just getting there. The process of getting there and asking the tough questions. And this is, by the way, I think when you do something like this, what it takes my clients, like each person, depending, 8 to 12 hours of commitment. That's not
in the scheme of things that much.
In the scheme of things, that's not much, right?
Yeah.
Now you have to add my time in there, right? But my point is, like, that's not a lot of time to get to just one page that we can all look at and agree on. Because if you don't have that, what you then have, what I've seen, to your point, is sales operating on a certain idea, customer success off an idea, product and engineering, hopefully in lockstep on a certain idea, the CEO raising money or talking to the board or whatever on a different idea. And that's where you start getting these like misalignments, to your point. Yeah. To me, this is the ultimate alignment tool. If we all agree on this, then okay. And by the way, if everybody in your company has access to that, so the salesperson off in the field who comes back and says, Todd, we need to build X because I can get a 5% uplift in this product, in this customer. They're pounding me for it. They've been pounding me for it for a year. Now you can have an intelligent conversation about that, right? So yes, you slowed down, but it speeds up everything. And I don't just mean, and I think this is what people lose. It's not just speeding up execution on your engineering roadmap. It's speeding up the conversations about customers. It's speeding up the conversations about, roadmap. It's speeding up the conversations about, where do we invest? Like it just speeds up everything down the line. And it doesn't also mean it's set forever. It's like, this is, we wrote it. We probably need, I like to revisit it once a quarter, even if it's just to say, yep, we're still on the same thing.
Right? I really love how you talk about that. I think it's like it's a tool kind of for radical clarity and radical coordination, because like every single decision you're making within a company, you're operating in a certain context. And if you all have really, really a shared, clear idea of what you're doing, it just makes everything you do that much easier. Like, I sometimes think when you're talking about execution, I think we look at speed as like, I mean, speed is kind of a vector. You're going somewhere, and the directional component of it is usually the one we're not paying attention to. All we want to be doing is just going somewhere really fast. But the problem is we're all going different places, so we actually end up not going anywhere very, very quickly.
Well, and I talk about, to go back to the racing, I'm like, if you look at a right angle turn, right?
Yeah.
There is a conventional wisdom around how you approach that turn. You come from if you say you're turning to the right, you come from the far left of the track. You kind of flatten that turn and you go track out to the far left on the other side.
Yeah.
Now take that, if that's all you're thinking about, the next feature, take that to Portland International Raceway. Turn 1 is a 90-degree turn. And guess what? Immediately there's like a 230-degree turn to the left. If you do the conventional wisdom, you're screwed. You're going into the stands. You're crashing into somebody. And so it's that, that's the whole reason why you have to take the time to write the strategy. Because, hey, if I tell you, Jay, build me a red box and blue ball in it, your engineers will build the best red box with a blue ball in it as efficiently as possible.
Yeah.
If I say, build me a red box with a blue ball, it's going to sit on a green conveyor and eventually go to a yellow stair step. But right now, all I want is the green box. The red box with the blue ball.
Yeah.
They're going to build that different.
100% differently. Yeah.
Right.
That context really matters.
And if the sales team knows I'm selling a red box with a blue ball in it, but eventually we're going to have this yellow conveyor.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yellow stair step. They're not going to come back to me and say, oh, by the way, we want it to end up in a purple bowl.
Yeah.
Or at least they may.
Yeah.
But at least they have the context of, like, now we're having a discussion, which is the better solution, the purple bowl or the yellow stair step. Right. I know that's a dumb example.
I mean, it is, but it makes a lot of sense. Also, your go-to-market organization, if they understand what we're doing versus our competitors and why we're positioning ourselves this way, and like it gives you this whole company coordination that I think I just see as vanishingly rare.
And it's interesting because here's what I've learned this, and I'm still learning this. Your point about people think, oh, takes too much time, whatever. I didn't get a job I was interviewing for specifically because they thought my process was too heavy. Now, I looked at that and I was, what? I obviously didn't explain this well enough, right? Yeah. Because that's the point. But the point I'm making here is, even then, like when you come into a company, you're like, okay, we've got to get a strategy. You can't say, okay, everybody, we need to have a strategy, blah, blah, blah. You have to do it, right? By example. Now, I did this at Conversica, and I didn't tell the exec team, we need to do a strategy. I mean, I did, but I didn't force them into it. I said, you know what, I'm going to get, and I had been working on this for, it took me a couple of months to get here, but I brought my team around to this way of thinking already.
Yeah.
Got our whole group together, included, some people from marketing, from engineering, and we came out with a strategy that everybody was like, okay, this is what we're looking for, right? And so you can't just do it by fiat either, I guess is what I'm getting at.
That makes sense. This is a little bit of a tangent, but one thing I've observed about the product role is that a lot of your authority comes from channeling customer and other feedback. And that puts a lot of product leaders in this really kind of awkward position sometimes, because you start a new role and it's like you have zero authority and you have to build that. How have you navigated that, or how do you see that challenge for product leaders?
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a very good point, because it is difficult, right? One of the challenges of the product role is that you are managing through influence. You're managing your sales team and how they position stuff, the marketing team and how they write about stuff, the CEO on the right, the engineering team and what we want to build.
Yeah.
I thought we talked about it a little bit earlier. There's data, but your point is, hey, you just started.
Yeah.
I think the first thing is ask a lot of questions, right? Show curiosity, because you will pick that up. Hey, the CS person that told me their customer said this, right? The salesperson said their prospect said this. And the first thing is immediately start meeting with customers. Immediately, day one. Okay, maybe not day. Day. Start meeting with customers, right? And at first, what I try to do is I just tell the sales team, the CS team, anytime you have I want to be on as many customer meetings, and I will go on, I'll say, I started this week. I'm just here to listen. Great to meet you. And what amazes me in a couple of different roles, like I've had people like, oh, it's so good to have our product team talking to customers.
Wow.
What?
That blows my mind.
Like, what? That's crazy. And a lot of times it's what happens is it's built up over time, right? Yeah. All the other stuff we talked about, like execution wasn't happening, velocity was slowing, things weren't coming out, the product team had lost credibility, and so they slowly get cut out, and then it just becomes this thing. And so, and that loss of credibility can be because your people are being transparent about trade-offs. Like it goes back to the mindset thing again, right? You got to get everybody on that same. And when I say everybody, I mean everybody, not just the product team and engineering team. I mean everybody has to have this same, over time, this same mindset, and that's what builds up the trust and get your product team in front of customers.
Absolutely.
Right. And what I've also found with customers, like one of the great things I started actually in my last role was when I go sit down with them, I'm like, hey, we're going to talk to you about, okay, first thing was just I'm listening. But as we started developing our roadmap, I'm like, hey, before we ever show you anything, I'd like to know what's working and what's not working for you with us. And that's not, because I'm like, I don't want to lead you down the path, right? I want to really hear it. And now, luckily, that generally what was working, what was not working, matched up with what we were doing, which meant we had been listening. But that's also the kind of feedback that truly can go back and make you, is our hypothesis correct? Maybe not.
Yeah.
Right. Or gives you the ammunition in the face of doubt to say, no, here's everything they said. So, I'm sorry, I lost the original question, but I think, just where I'm talking with customers and I need to get that context to drive it. There's no replacement for the hard work of meeting with customers, whether it's virtually or in person. You just got to get out and do it. That needs to be a decent part of your time early on and always.
I totally agree with that. And I actually, one of the anti-patterns I see in a lot of organizations is product is so pulled into a lot of the engineering function that they don't have any bandwidth for being as externally facing as they often can be.
So,
Oh, okay. This is interesting. I
I
see your
think,
face.
well, so pulled in. So number one, I always say, hey, you can go off and interview 100 companies and ask them to define what product management means, and
Yeah.
you'll get 95 definitions. And if you take that 100 and interview 2 people from those 100 companies, you'll end up with at least 150 definitions.
Yeah.
Okay. I think there are multiple reasons for the scenario you set, but I think a lot of times the reason why product managers have retreated within the company and spend more of their time inside is because they've allowed that to happen.
Yeah.
They've allowed it to happen for multiple reasons, because it's easier. It's easier to just work with engineering, your partner, and deliver something. It's easier than getting yelled at by a customer, getting challenged by a customer.
Sometimes it's also compensating for weaknesses in engineering. Yeah.
It's a very good point.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's that they've lost the trust of the go-to-market team, and they don't want them out there.
Yeah.
So, but that can't stop, right? I mean, I guess it depends. Like, to me, if a company has decided, no, our product managers are internal, then you're talking about project management. That's a different role.
I totally agree with that.
That's how I define it.
I agree.
There's nothing wrong with that. Right? Sometimes I thought we very successfully instituted a great project management approach at New Relic, which is really more about managing the complex cross-team initiatives.
Yeah, the
which
programs.
was great, as opposed to, no, I'm going to sit here and keep track of your story points and what's being delivered and all that, right?
Yeah.
And so I do think when you see product managers getting more into writing JIRA tickets than sharing notes about the customer conversation they just had, you really need to have a hard look at why.
Yeah, and I feel like, the work that is happening is probably really valuable, but it's to me it feels like wasted opportunity, because you're not sensing your customers, you're not sensing your environment, and like your product people are so well positioned to do that work, and they should be, hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Todd, do you mind telling me a little bit about your consulting practice and what sort of problems you solve for customers, and who would be the type of client that should reach out to?
Yeah, thanks. So here's what I realized, right? To go back in the conversation we've had this whole hour, starting with project upscale. What I found is, what I did at New Relic, then as each new job I went to, I found variations of the same issue. Hey, Todd, we just need you to come in and really put in some process. Come in there. Yeah, we need a process. We don't have a strategy, right? Or this or whatever, right? And so what I found is that I could really, at the end of the day, like, I keep doing these similar things around how do we write a strategy? How do we put together our operating rhythms around transparent? How do we make no silent trade-offs? How do we document really what we're doing and why, and share that, right? How do we make cross-functional, decisions and stick with them around priorities and everything? How do we prioritize things? What's the approach? Why is that important? All these things. And I realize, like, I keep doing the same thing. And it's usually around a company where there's, I'm not going to put an ARR number on it, but it's really around scaling and emerging companies. And it's usually at that point where something has outgrown your initial processes, mindset, whatever. And it's usually around, okay, we're big enough now to introduce a second product. right? We want to go to a different geo. We want to go to a different vertical. We've just grown where it's no longer 10 people sitting in a room. It's all these people that are spread out. And by spread out, it could be you have a big office, but you have salespeople, customer success people, whatever, right? It's usually as you scale, you start getting these problems where you can't just do it verbally anymore. Or our assumptions about what really scaled our first product aren't holding for the second product.
Right. Or there's a big shift in the market and some of the things you've been doing aren't working.
2023, ChatGPT comes in, everything changes, right?
Yeah.
2022, I guess, actually. Anyway, and so, so what I've thought about is I've kind of packaged up some things. One is the audit, which is just, I call it the product OS, a product operating system. There's an audit, which is, okay, we talked about that earlier. Let's assess your strategy, your documentation and communication, your prioritization and planning, your operating rhythms, and your mindset, right? Let's evaluate that, and I'll come back to you and say, okay, kind of I've kind of got three outcomes. One is score on where does your strategy fit, on which bucket of your approach to strategy. There's a maturity score around those other things, like, oh, you're really there, or maybe you're really early. And then 2 to 3, like, here is the low hanging fruit. You can get I believe you can get the most, benefit from addressing these first. So that's the audit. That actually leads into what I call my product operating system implementation, which is basically start with the audit, and then we just work through. Okay, great. Let's work through strategy. Let's work through how you document and communicate. Let's work through how you prioritize and plan. Let's work through your operating rhythms. And it's not like, here's my playbook, go implement it. I want to be really clear. It's like, well, I have frameworks, I have ideas, but let's start with where you are.
Yeah.
And sometimes that may be, okay, you kind of restart. Or you have to implement something to start with, right? Or it's like, oh no, let's just tweak it here and there. Right?
Yeah.
So that's the audit. Then there's the product operating system implementation, which is like about 4 months, including the audit. Then there's I've got a workshop which it's a half day. It's an interactive workshop, cross-functional, coming around on as a product operating system. It's really around shared language and shared strategy. Like, where are you as a team? Think about this. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
For example. And then I can also do like an hour and a half consultation to say you have a problem, right? One particular thing. Yeah. And then underneath all that is what I would call an embedded fractional chief product officer, which is, could be because, you're growing and you're not quite ready to fully employ somebody's experience, but you really can benefit from it. And it's, around help, it's a obvious fractional time to help kind of manage these rhythms, implement them, coach people, whatever. Right. So those are kind of the big chunks.
That's great. How can people find you on the internet?
Yeah. So it's, pretty easy. Of course, you can always look in my LinkedIn profile, which is Todd Etchieson, all one word, on the LinkedIn /in, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You can find me at Apex Solutions, and it's that's a long name, so I've shortened it down to Apex SOL, APEXSOL.io.
Nice.
And you can reach me there.
Awesome. Todd, this has been so much fun. It's always a pleasure, and it's just fun to introduce you to everybody. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Decoding Leadership. As always, I welcome your questions and feedback. And if you're looking for coaching or advisory help, you can contact me at rubik.com. See you next time.